The ship of Theseus paradox. Imagine you're standing at the shore of an ancient harbor, watching a magnificent ship, the ship of Theseus, sail majestically across the water. It's a symbol of great history, perhaps used in battle or exploration. Over the years, this ship has undergone numerous repairs. Each time a plank splinters or a sail rips, it is replaced with a new, identical piece. Now, picture this. After decades, every single part of the ship has been replaced. Not a single original piece remains. Is it still the ship of Theseus? This is the essence of the ship of Theseus paradox. It's a thought experiment that questions the very nature of identity, change, and persistence over time. In simpler terms, can something still be considered the same thing if all its components have been replaced? The ship of Theseus paradox can be illustrated through this scenario. Imagine a ship. Let's call it Ship A. Over time, as parts of the ship deteriorate, they're replaced with brand new materials. Eventually, every single part of Ship A is replaced. Now, we have a new ship that has never had any original pieces, but it is still called the Ship of Theseus. Here's where things get tricky. If you take the old, discarded parts, the ones that have been replaced, and reassemble them into a new ship, you now have two ships, one made up of the original parts and the other made up of new parts. Which one, if any, is the true ship of Theseus? Is the new ship still the ship of Theseus, or is the one made from the original parts more authentic? To make this concept clearer, let's compare it to something more familiar. Let's say you have a favorite guitar. You love it, and it's been with you for years. One day, the strings break, so you replace them. Then, the fretboard starts to wear out, and you replace that. Slowly, over time, every part of your guitar, strings, wood, neck, pickups, is replaced. After a while, you're left with a guitar that looks identical to the original one, but is made of entirely new parts. Is it still the same guitar? Or is it a completely different instrument now? Some might argue that, as long as it plays the same and looks the same, it's still the same guitar. But here's where the paradox gets interesting. If you had kept all the original parts and reassembled them into a new guitar, would that guitar be the real one? Would it be more authentic than the one with the newly replaced parts? This paradox isn't just an abstract idea. It has real-world applications and parallels. Let's look at companies and their products. Consider the famous case of Apple. Over the years, Apple's products, like the iPhone, have undergone numerous redesigns with every component being changed. Yet, we still refer to the iPhone as the iPhone, even though each new model is fundamentally different from its predecessors. Is the iPhone still the iPhone, or has it become something else entirely with every new version? And if you could somehow gather all the parts from the original iPhone and rebuild it, would that be the true iPhone? Another real-world example is human beings. Every 7 to 10 years, your body's cells regenerate, replacing virtually every cell in your body. In a sense, you're constantly being replaced, piece by piece. Does this mean that, after a certain period of time, you are not the same person you were before? If you've had every part of yourself replaced, are you still the same person, or are you someone new? The Ship of Theseus paradox also invites us to explore the idea of personal identity over time. Think about your life's journey. Over the years, you change, grow, and experience new things. Your views, preferences, and even your physical body transform. At what point, if any, do you cease being the same person you were in the past? Psychologists and philosophers have long debated what constitutes personal identity. Is it the continuity of your memories, experiences, and personality that make you you? Or is it the physical continuity of your body? Or perhaps, like the Ship of Theseus, it's a combination of both that allows you to remain the same person through change. In modern philosophy, some argue that identity is more about narrative than about physical components. In this view, your identity is a story you tell yourself about who you are, and as long as you can connect the dots between who you were and who you are now, you remain the same person, even if every part of you has changed. The Ship of Theseus in modern contexts. The paradox has significant implications beyond personal identity. For instance, in artificial intelligence and robotics, as machines evolve and replace their components, they become more human in some sense. If a robot has its entire system swapped out for more advanced parts, is it still the same robot? And if you start replacing human parts with artificial organs and limbs, even in politics and society, the ship of Theseus paradox has applications. As a society changes its laws, values, and structures over time, it may raise the question of whether it is still the same society, or if it has transformed into something completely different. A country, for example, can change its constitution, adopt new policies, and replace its leadership. But at what point does it cease to be the same country? Conclusion: the ship of Theseus paradox challenges our basic assumptions about identity and change. It forces us to confront the question, what does it mean for something to remain the same over time? Whether it's a ship, a guitar, a human being, or even a society, the idea of change, especially incremental change, complicates our understanding of what remains constant. As we reflect on the paradox, it becomes clear that the answers are not simple, and they may differ depending on how we approach the question of identity. Is it about the components, the function, the continuity of the story? Ultimately, the ship of Theseus paradox reminds us that change is inevitable, and perhaps it is the process of transformation, rather than the fixed identity, that matters most. This thought-provoking paradox encourages us to explore the very nature of identity, continuity, and the passage of time, concepts that define much of our experience in this world. The unexpected hanging paradox. Imagine you are a prisoner in a medieval kingdom, and one day, the king delivers a rather strange decree. He announces that you will be hanged at noon on one of the days of the following week. But there's a catch. The hanging will be a surprise. You won't know the day until it happens, and the executioner will ensure that it is a surprise even to you. You're told that it's impossible for you to predict the day of your execution. The king's decree seems both clear and ominous. But as the days pass, you begin to ponder. Could the execution be a trick? And if so, how can it possibly be a surprise if you try to deduce it? At first, you think it's a straightforward riddle. The king says the hanging will happen on one day next week, but it must be a surprise. Let's try to break it down logically. You reason that the hanging cannot happen on the last day of the week, Friday, because if you've survived the first 4 days, Monday to Thursday, you'll know that it must happen on Friday, and it will no longer be a surprise. Then you reason that if it can't happen on Friday, it must happen on Thursday. But if you've survived until Thursday, then Thursday becomes the last possible day, and by similar logic, it's no longer a surprise. You continue this reasoning all the way down the week, and you conclude that the hanging can't happen at all. But the king said it would. Here's where the paradox kicks in. Despite all your reasoning, the hanging happens. The executioner arrives on an unexpected day, and indeed the hanging is a complete surprise. How can this be? You've logically deduced that the hanging is impossible, and yet it happens as the king predicted. This paradox doesn't just confuse prisoners, it has puzzled philosophers and logicians for centuries. On one hand, it seems like the king's decree is inherently contradictory. If the prisoner can deduce the day of the execution, it would not be a surprise. But the king's decree holds true. The execution is a surprise, even though the prisoner tried to predict it. To understand this more clearly, imagine you're not a prisoner, but rather a participant in a game show. The host tells you that you'll be given a prize, but you won't know what the prize is until the end of the show. However, you are told that the prize will be something unexpected. Naturally, you begin to analyze this, trying to figure out what the prize could be so that you're not caught off guard. You deduce that it can't be a big prize, like a car or a vacation, because you know those are the most likely prizes that would be announced last. It can't be a simple item, like a gift card, because that would be too easy. So you begin to predict, and in the end, the prize you receive is a surprise, but you've been thinking about it so much that it isn't a surprise at all. This is very similar to the paradox, where your thinking causes the very surprise you tried to avoid. The unexpected hanging paradox delves into the concept of surprise and logical prediction. It forces us to confront the limits of our reasoning. If you think you can predict something, does that prediction negate the idea of it being a surprise? And if something is truly unpredictable, can we still reason about it? This paradox challenges the idea of determinism, the belief that every event or state of affairs is determined by preceding events or natural laws. In this case, the prisoner's logic suggests a deterministic world where the hanging cannot happen. But the surprise element defies that assumption, suggesting that there's something fundamentally unpredictable about the world. This paradox doesn't just exist in theory, it appears in real-life scenarios where surprise and expectation intersect. For example, in quantum mechanics, particles behave in ways that seem random or unpredictable, despite scientific efforts to predict their behavior. This is somewhat similar to the paradox, where a seemingly logical conclusion, the impossibility of the hanging, is upended by an event that defies prediction. Another example comes from game theory, a field that examines strategic decision-making. In many games, players attempt to predict the moves of their opponents, but when everyone knows the game's logic, it becomes harder to surprise anyone. The idea that a surprise can still exist, despite all logical thinking, offers a fascinating challenge to game theorists. The unexpected hanging paradox also brings to light the psychological aspects of expectation and prediction. Humans tend to seek patterns and predict outcomes based on the information at hand. When faced with uncertainty, our brains try to make sense of it, often leading to overthinking. In this case, the prisoner's attempt to logically deduce the day of the hanging actually prevents them from truly being surprised. This paradox highlights how our minds work to make sense of the unknown. Even when faced with uncertainty, we struggle to predict events, and our attempts to do so often backfire. Beyond philosophical puzzles, the unexpected hanging paradox touches on the uncertainty principle in various fields of study. In economics, for instance, the unpredictability of the market often frustrates analysts who attempt to predict trends. Despite all available data, unexpected events, like a sudden crash or boom, occur, proving that prediction is never 100% certain. In art and entertainment, surprises are an essential element of storytelling. Writers, filmmakers, and musicians often use twists and unexpected outcomes to captivate their audiences. The paradox is a reminder that, despite our expectations and reasoning, there's always room for surprise in the narrative of life. The unexpected hanging paradox is a fascinating exploration of reasoning, prediction, and surprise. It challenges our assumptions about determinism and how we understand the world. Can something truly be unexpected if we try to predict it? Can logic ever really anticipate the unknown? The paradox shows that sometimes our very attempts to control or understand the future are the things that make it unpredictable. At its core, the paradox reminds us of the limits of human understanding. We can reason, we can predict, but there will always be aspects of life that defy our grasp. And perhaps in that very uncertainty lies the true surprise. This paradox, with its mind-bending logic and unexpected twist, remains a classic example of how our attempts to predict and control can ultimately undermine our ability to anticipate the future. The bootstrap paradox. Imagine this. You've just come across an old, dusty book at a flea market. It's a fascinating historical text, but as you flip through it, you discover something incredible. A detailed account of the works of Shakespeare, including all of his famous plays, written by none other than you. Yes, you wrote them. Confused but intrigued, you continue reading and learn that it was actually you who traveled back in time and gave Shakespeare the copy of your book, allowing him to publish the plays as his own. But then, where did the original writings come from? You've only ever known them to be written by Shakespeare, but now they seem to have come from you. Welcome to the world of the bootstrap paradox, a time travel conundrum that defies our understanding of causality and origin. It's the paradox of a thing or a piece of information creating itself. In this case, the plays of Shakespeare are handed to him by a time traveler who later uses those same plays to travel back in time. The bootstrap paradox works like this. You receive something, say a book or a piece of music or an invention, without knowing where it came from. You then go back in time and give it to someone else, in this case Shakespeare, who publishes it, thus ensuring it's available for you to later discover. But here's the question. Where did the original idea or object come from? Who really created it? Is it truly original, or is it simply perpetuating itself in an infinite loop? In our example, Shakespeare's works are not written by him or by you, but instead are the result of a time loop where the author is both the recipient and the creator of the work, making it impossible to trace the true origin of the idea. This self-sustaining loop creates an intriguing mystery. Who is the real creator of the work? Let's simplify the example. Imagine you have a favorite novel. One day, you travel back in time and give a copy of the book to its author, ensuring that the book is published. Then, you later discover the book in your own time, but you're left wondering, who actually created the story? Did you? Did the author? Or is it an artifact of time itself? This paradox isn't just limited to books. It can apply to inventions or even ideas. Take, for instance, the invention of the light bulb. What if, in the future, someone travels back in time and gives Thomas Edison the plans for the light bulb? Edison then patents it as his own, but where did the original design come from? Did Edison invent it, or was it simply handed to him by someone from the future? The bootstrap paradox presents some deep philosophical questions, particularly around causality, the relationship between cause and effect. In our traditional understanding of time, events follow a linear progression. One thing causes another. But in the bootstrap paradox, we have a scenario where an event, like the creation of a book, seems to be both its own cause and effect. This raises questions about time travel and its implications on our understanding of reality. Could something exist outside of time, causing its own creation in a loop? And if an object or idea can create itself, does this break our usual understanding of cause and effect? Real-world analogies. While the bootstrap paradox is often thought of in the context of time travel, similar concepts can be found in the real world, particularly in the field of knowledge and innovation. For example, consider how ideas evolve over time. Think about the evolution of technology. Inventions are often built upon the discoveries of previous inventors, creating a complex web of causality. The true origin of any innovation can become obscured, as many breakthroughs are influenced by earlier ideas that weren't necessarily original. One could argue that the progress of human knowledge might resemble a sort of time loop, where knowledge doesn't have a clear starting point, but is continually rediscovered and repurposed. Similarly, in art and music, artists often draw inspiration from works created by others. What happens if a piece of music or a painting becomes so influential that its origin is lost? Could an artist, in essence, be recreating something that was passed on to them without knowing its true origins? The paradox in time travel movies. The bootstrap paradox has become a popular concept in time travel stories, offering a rich narrative tool for exploring questions about creation and identity. One of the most famous examples of this paradox appears in the movie Predestination, in which a time traveler goes back in time and essentially creates themselves in a loop. They're both the instigator and the recipient of a chain of events that ultimately result in their own creation. Another example can be found in Back to the Future, where Marty McFly's actions in the past have ripple effects that influence the future in unexpected ways. While it may not follow the exact structure of the bootstrap paradox, it plays with the same idea of events that seem to create themselves in a closed loop. The bootstrap paradox forces us to reconsider the logical implications of time travel. If we can influence the past, does that mean we create the future? In the case of the paradox, the future traveler's actions directly impact their past, making it difficult to determine what really happened. This raises the question, is the future already predetermined, or do our actions create multiple versions of reality? It also challenges the idea of free will. If everything is set into motion by a single event, are we merely playing out a story already written, or do we have the power to change the course of time? In the case of a self-creating object, like the plays of Shakespeare or an invention, the paradox challenges our understanding of identity. Who is the true creator of the work, and how do we define authorship? Is it the person who first writes something down? Or is it the one who discovers and preserves it for future generations? The bootstrap paradox suggests that identity and creation can be circular, challenging the conventional understanding of originality. In the same way, we might ask, what does it mean to create something? If an idea exists only because it has been passed along through time, can we still call it ours? And does it matter if it was never truly created by anyone? The bootstrap paradox forces us to question our understanding of causality, origins, and time itself. If an object or idea can create itself, then the lines between cause and effect blur, leaving us to wonder, what is the true origin of anything? While the paradox may remain a fascinating riddle in the realm of time travel and fiction, it also invites us to reflect on the nature of innovation, knowledge, and creation in our everyday lives. Ideas, inventions, and discoveries often feel like they come from nowhere, only to be rediscovered or reinterpreted over time. In that sense, maybe the bootstrap paradox is more than just a time travel conundrum. It's a reflection of how we experience the world, with its cyclical patterns and endless potential for reinvention. The grandfather paradox. Imagine you travel back in time and meet your grandfather. While you're there, you do something unexpected. You accidentally prevent him from ever meeting your grandmother. Without that meeting, your parents are never born, and neither are you. But if you were never born, then how could you have traveled back in time to prevent that meeting in the first place? This is the grandfather paradox, a classic conundrum that questions the logical implications of time travel and causality. It's a scenario where the act of changing the past seems to create a logical contradiction, where you've both caused and prevented your own existence at the same time. Let's break down the situation step by step. 1. You travel back in time to a point where your grandfather is young. 2. You somehow prevent him from meeting your grandmother, perhaps by causing a series of events that keep them apart. 3. Without this meeting, your parents are never born. 4. Without your parents, you are never born either. 5. If you were never born, then you couldn't have traveled back in time to interfere with your grandfather's meeting. At this point, you've created a paradox. If you never existed, how could you have prevented your own existence? This paradox questions the very idea of time travel, suggesting that any attempt to alter the past could lead to contradictions in the timeline. The grandfather paradox raises deep questions about causality and the nature of time. If time is linear and events follow a specific order, how can one change the past without disrupting the future? The paradox suggests that any attempt to change the past might result in a self-defeating loop. Some philosophers argue that this paradox is a flaw in the concept of time travel itself. If time travel is possible, the paradox suggests there would be inherent contradictions that prevent it from being logically consistent. Others propose that the timeline might self-correct. If you try to alter the past, the universe will somehow prevent you from doing so, maintaining the integrity of the timeline. This paradox is closely related to the butterfly effect, a concept in chaos theory. The butterfly effect suggests that small changes in the past can have massive consequences in the future. If you go back in time and alter even a tiny event, like preventing your grandfather from meeting your grandmother, it could cause a ripple effect, changing the course of history in unpredictable ways. In the case of the grandfather paradox, the change you make is so significant that it disrupts the entire timeline, leading to the impossibility of your existence. The paradox highlights the fragility of the timeline and how even small changes can potentially erase entire generations. Real-world analogies. The grandfather paradox also has parallels in real-life decision-making. Sometimes, small actions we take today can have profound consequences in the future. For example, the choice to go to a specific school, move to a particular city, or pursue a particular career can drastically alter the course of your life, affecting everything from relationships to career opportunities. In this way, the paradox is a reminder of how every action, no matter how small, can influence the future in unpredictable ways. There are several ways that philosophers and scientists have attempted to resolve the grandfather paradox. 1. The many worlds interpretation. According to this theory, whenever you travel back in time and change something, you don't alter your original timeline. Instead, you create a new timeline or parallel universe. In this case, preventing your grandfather from meeting your grandmother would create an alternate timeline in which you never exist, but your original timeline remains intact. 2. Self-consistency principle. This idea, proposed by physicist Igor Novikov, suggests that any actions taken in the past will have been part of the original timeline all along. In other words, you cannot change the past in a way that contradicts your existence. If you traveled back in time to stop your grandfather from meeting your grandmother, something would happen to prevent that from occurring, ensuring that you are stillborn. 3. Closed time-like curves. Some theories in general relativity suggest that time itself could form a loop, allowing events to be self-consistent without contradiction. In this case, actions taken in the past and future might be connected in a way that prevents paradoxes from arising. The timeline would close on itself, meaning that you would never be able to create a contradiction, no matter what actions you took. The grandfather paradox isn't just a fun thought experiment. It speaks to deeper questions about free will and determinism. If you travel back in time and alter the past, do you truly have the freedom to change the future? Or are your actions already part of a preordained chain of events? The paradox also explores the nature of identity. If your existence depends on a specific chain of events, what happens to your identity if that chain is broken? Would you cease to exist, or would you simply evolve into a different version of yourself? The grandfather paradox has appeared in numerous time travel stories, often highlighting the dangers of meddling with the past. In Back to the Future, Marty McFly's actions in the past put his own existence in jeopardy, as his presence in the past disrupts the timeline. Although the story doesn't directly use the grandfather paradox, it plays with similar themes of altering the past and risking the future. In Doctor Who, the concept of time travel often encounters paradoxes, and the Doctor frequently addresses the consequences of changing history. The show often suggests that the timeline will find a way to correct itself, preventing paradoxes from causing irreparable damage. The grandfather paradox highlights the logical difficulties that arise when we think about time travel. By attempting to change the past, we encounter contradictions that challenge our understanding of causality and existence. Whether we can resolve these paradoxes through theories like parallel universes or self-consistency is still up for debate. What's clear is that the grandfather paradox forces us to confront our assumptions about time, fate, and the interconnectedness of events. It asks, if we could change the past, would we really want to? And if we did, could we live with the consequences? The twin paradox. Imagine this. You have a twin, and both of you are exactly the same age. One day, your twin gets into a spacecraft and blasts off to travel to a distant star. They travel close to the speed of light, and after several years, they return to Earth. When they arrive, you're still the same age, but your twin has aged much less than you. In fact, they're decades younger than you. This is the twin paradox, a mind-bending phenomenon from the theory of special relativity. It's a thought experiment that challenges our understanding of time, age, and speed. At first glance, it seems like a contradiction. How can your twin, who experienced time in the same way as you, age less than you? At the heart of the twin paradox is the theory of time dilation, which states that time moves differently for objects in motion relative to those at rest. The faster an object moves, the slower time appears to pass for that object compared to one that remains stationary. This effect becomes particularly noticeable at speeds close to the speed of light. Here's the situation in simple terms. 1. You and your twin are the same age at the start. 2. Your twin travels to a distant star at a speed close to the speed of light. 3. While your twin is traveling, time for them moves more slowly compared to you on Earth. 4. After several years, your twin returns, but they've only aged a few years, while you've aged decades. At first, this seems impossible. How can time behave differently for two people who started at the same age? Why isn't the same thing happening to both of you? Time dilation explained. The key to the twin paradox lies in the concept of time dilation. According to Einstein's theory of special relativity, the speed of light is constant for all observers, no matter how fast they are moving. As an object approaches the speed of light, its time slows down relative to an observer who is stationary. In the case of your twin, while they're traveling at near light speeds, time for them slows down relative to you on Earth. From your perspective on Earth, it looks like your twin is aging more slowly. However, from your twin's perspective, they would see you aging faster as they observe you from their moving spacecraft. This is where the paradox arises. Each twin sees the other aging more slowly, but when they reunite, there's no contradiction. The twin who traveled at near light speed has indeed aged less, and this is the result of time dilation. The paradox also hinges on the relativity of simultaneity, another concept from Einstein's special relativity. This principle suggests that events that appear simultaneous to one observer might not appear simultaneous to another observer moving at a different speed. In the case of the twins, your twin's journey involves events, like turning around to come back to Earth, that you see differently. While they are traveling close to the speed of light, the passage of time for them doesn't match the passage of time for you on Earth. Their experience of now differs from yours due to their motion. So how do we resolve the paradox? It turns out the key is that the twin who travels is not in an inertial frame of reference, a reference frame where no forces are acting on the object, while the twin on Earth is. This means that your twin's journey involves acceleration and deceleration when they turn around to come back, which breaks the symmetry of the situation. The traveling twin is the one who undergoes changes in their velocity, meaning their experience of time is different from yours, which explains why they age slower. The earthbound twin, by contrast, remains in a stationary, inertial frame of reference, where time passes normally for them. Though the twin paradox is often presented as a thought experiment, time dilation has been experimentally verified. In real-world experiments, particles called muons have been observed to live longer when they are traveling close to the speed of light. Similarly, astronauts on high-speed flights experience time at a slightly slower rate than people on Earth, but the effect is so small that it's barely noticeable. One of the most famous real-life demonstrations of time dilation involves the Halley-Keating experiment, where atomic clocks were flown around the world in airplanes. When compared with clocks on the ground, the clocks on the planes showed a slight time difference, supporting the predictions of special relativity. The twin paradox challenges our intuitive understanding of time and reality. It forces us to confront the idea that time is not absolute, but is instead relative to the observer's frame of reference. This has profound philosophical implications. Is time universal? The paradox suggests that time is not a fixed, universal experience, but can vary depending on your velocity. What does it mean to age? The question of whether the traveling twin or the earthbound twin has experienced more real time invites reflection on the subjective nature of aging and experience. What is the nature of reality? If time is relative, does this imply that reality itself is shaped by the observer? How do we reconcile this with the idea of a shared, objective world? The twin paradox is often associated with the idea of time travel, though the paradox itself does not involve traveling to the past. Instead, it's about the different rates at which time passes for different observers. However, it touches on the concept of time travel by illustrating how motion can alter the flow of time. If time dilation can slow down the passage of time for someone moving at high speeds, one might imagine the possibility of traveling into the future. For instance, if you could travel at near light speeds for a year, you might return to find that many years have passed on Earth. In this way, time travel to the future is theoretically possible according to the principles of special relativity. The twin paradox often appears in science fiction as a way to explore the consequences of high-speed space travel. In Star Trek, for example, characters regularly experience time dilation as they travel through space at high speeds. The paradox is sometimes used as a plot device to show how characters can age at different rates. Another famous example is the movie Interstellar, where astronauts traveling near a supermassive black hole experience time dilation. Time on the planet near the black hole passes much more slowly compared to Earth, leading to a situation where years pass for the astronauts while decades pass on Earth. The twin paradox offers a fascinating glimpse into the strange and counterintuitive world of special relativity. By demonstrating how time can be experienced differently depending on your speed, it forces us to rethink our assumptions about time, aging, and the nature of reality. Though the paradox may seem perplexing at first, it ultimately shows that time, far from being an absolute, fixed concept, is deeply connected to the relative motion of observers. And while the twin paradox might seem like a theoretical puzzle, the principles it explores have been tested and confirmed in the real world, making it a striking example of how science fiction and science fact can overlap. The paradox of Achilles and the tortoise. Picture this. The great Greek hero Achilles challenges a tortoise to a race. Being kind, Achilles gives the tortoise a head start of, say, 100 meters. Achilles is much faster, running 10 times the speed of the tortoise. Confident in his abilities, he starts the race. But here's the catch. Every time Achilles reaches the spot where the tortoise was, the tortoise has moved a bit farther ahead. This keeps happening over and over again. So the paradox arises. How is it possible for Achilles, who is so much faster, to ever overtake the tortoise? Mathematically, it seems that Achilles is stuck in an infinite loop of catching up, never reaching the tortoise. To fully understand the paradox, let's break it into steps. 1. Initial distance. At the start of the race, the tortoise has a 100-meter head start. 2. Achilles reaches the first spot. By the time Achilles runs 100 meters to where the tortoise started, the tortoise has moved farther ahead, let's say 10 meters. 3. Achilles reaches the second spot. Now, Achilles runs 10 meters to where the tortoise was, but the tortoise has moved another meter forward. 4. Repeat forever. Every time Achilles reaches the tortoise's previous position, the tortoise has moved forward a little more. This process repeats infinitely, creating the illusion that Achilles can never actually catch the tortoise. The paradox in numbers. The paradox arises because we can break down Achilles' pursuit into an infinite series of steps. In the first step, Achilles runs 100 meters. In the second step, he runs 10 meters. In the third step, he runs 1 meter. In the fourth step, he runs 0.1 meters. And so on. This creates an infinite sequence of distances. The question is, can the sum of an infinite number of steps ever result in a finite distance? The Achilles and the tortoise paradox is one of Zeno's paradoxes, proposed by the ancient Greek philosopher Zeno of Elea. The resolution lies in modern mathematics, specifically the concept of convergent series. Here's how it works. 1. While the sequence of steps is infinite, the sum of the distances is finite. 2. The total distance Achilles runs is 100 plus 10 plus 1 plus 0.1 plus 0.01 plus dots. The role of time. Another way to resolve the paradox is by considering time. While Achilles takes an infinite number of steps to reach the tortoise, the amount of time it takes for each step gets smaller and smaller. The total time required is finite, which means Achilles overtakes the tortoise in a measurable amount of time. Why the paradox is so fascinating? The Achilles and the tortoise paradox is more than just a mathematical puzzle. It challenges our intuitions about infinity, motion, and time. On the surface, it seems absurd to suggest that Achilles could never overtake the tortoise, but the paradox forces us to think carefully about what it means to divide motion into smaller and smaller segments. Applications in real life. 1. Technology. The paradox is a metaphor for how tasks in technology can become infinitely divided. For example, when a computer processes information, it breaks down tasks into smaller and smaller operations, yet completes them in a finite time. 2. Physics. In quantum physics, Zeno's paradoxes are relevant to phenomena like Zeno's effect, where a system's evolution is seemingly frozen due to continuous observation. 3. Philosophy. The paradox raises questions about the nature of time and space. Is time continuous, like an infinite stream, or is it discrete, like individual moments? Modern-day analogies. 1. Downloading files. Imagine downloading a file, and each time it gets closer to completion, the progress slows down. While it feels like it will take forever, it eventually finishes in finite time, just like Achilles catching the tortoise. 2. Running a marathon. If you think about each step of a marathon as a smaller fraction of the total distance, you could theoretically divide the journey into an infinite number of steps. But in reality, the marathon is completed in finite time. In reality, Achilles will always overtake the tortoise. The paradox lies not in the physical world, but in how we conceptualize infinity. Once we understand that an infinite sequence can have a finite sum, the problem dissolves. Philosophical implications. The Achilles and the tortoise paradox isn't just about math or physics, it's about how we perceive the world. It challenges our assumptions about motion, time, and the infinite. It also serves as a reminder that our intuitions are not always reliable. and that deeper analysis is often required to uncover the truth. Zeno's paradox of Achilles and the tortoise might seem like an ancient curiosity, but it has profound implications for mathematics, philosophy, and science. By exploring the nature of infinity and the division of time and space, the paradox teaches us to question our assumptions and think more deeply about the fundamental nature of reality. The ship of Theseus. The paradox of identity. Imagine a famous ship, the ship of Theseus, preserved in a museum. Over time, the wooden planks of the ship begin to decay, so they're replaced one by one with new planks. Eventually, every single plank of the original ship is replaced. The question is the restored ship still the ship of Theseus? Now take it a step further. Imagine someone gathers all the original, decayed planks and rebuilds the ship using them. Now there are two ships, one made of the new planks and the other made of the original planks. Which one, if any, is the real ship of Theseus? This paradox dives deep into the concept of identity, raising questions about what makes something the same over time. Is it the material, the form, or something else entirely? Breaking down the paradox, the ship of Theseus. Paradox highlights the complexities of identity and change. Let's explore its key elements. 1. The continuity argument. The ship in the museum has been repaired continuously. Even though all the parts have been replaced, it's still recognized as the ship of Theseus because it has maintained its function, appearance, and history. 2. The original material argument. The ship rebuilt from the original planks could also be considered the true ship of Theseus because it's made of the same material as the original. 3. The identity problem. The paradox forces us to ask, what defines the essence of an object? Is it its physical components, its form, its function, or something more abstract? Theories that address the paradox. 1. Essentialism. Essentialists argue that objects have an inherent essence that defines their identity. In this view, the ship of Theseus is the same ship as long as it retains its essential purpose and form, regardless of the materials used. Example: a person might still identify their childhood home as theirs, even if it has been renovated beyond recognition, because the essence of the home remains tied to their memories and experiences. 2. Materialism. Materialists believe that an object's identity is tied to its physical components. In this view, the ship made of the original planks is the true ship of Theseus. Example: if someone keeps the original pieces of a broken family heirloom and repairs it, they might value it more than a replica made of new materials, even if it looks identical. 3. Relationalism. Relationalists focus on the relationships and history of the object. The ship of Theseus in the museum is the real ship because it's the one that has been continuously tied to Theseus's legacy. Example: a musician's guitar, even if heavily repaired, is still considered theirs because it carries the history of their performances. 4. The paradox of dual identity. Some argue that both ships could be considered the ship of Theseus in different contexts. The ship in the museum represents continuity, while the ship rebuilt from original planks represents material authenticity. Modern analogies. 1. Personal identity. Think about yourself. Over time, every cell in your body is replaced and your thoughts and experiences evolve. Are you still the same person you were 10 years ago? What defines your identity? Your physical body, your memories, or something else? 2. Technology. Consider a computer. If you replace its processor, hard drive, screen, and every other component, is it still the same computer? If you build another computer using the old parts, which one is the original? 3. Cultural artifacts. In museums, ancient artifacts are often restored with new materials. Are they still the same objects, or have they become replicas? 4. Sports teams. A sports team may change players, coaches, and even its home city over time. Yet fans still view it as the same team. Why? Because the identity of the team is tied to its history and legacy, not just its current composition. The ship of Theseus paradox raises profound questions about the nature of identity and change. 1. What makes something itself? Is identity tied to material, form, function, or history? Or is it a combination of these factors? 2. Can something be replaced completely and still be the same? If every part of an object is replaced, does it remain the same object, or does it become something entirely new? 3. What is the role of memory and perception in identity? Does something remain the same because we perceive it as such, even if it has changed fundamentally? The ship of Theseus in modern science. 1. Biology. The human body replaces its cells over time. Every 7 to 10 years, most of the cells in your body are new. Yet you still consider yourself the same person. Why? Perhaps because your sense of identity is tied to your continuous experiences and memories, not your physical components. 2. Artificial intelligence. If an AI system is constantly updated, at what point does it become a different system? This question is central to debates about AI identity and ethics. 3. Quantum physics. In quantum mechanics, particles can exchange properties while remaining indistinguishable. This challenges traditional notions of identity and individuality. The ship of Theseus in pop culture. 1. WandaVision. In the Marvel series WandaVision, two versions of Vision, the original Vision and a rebuilt version, debate the ship of Theseus paradox. They conclude that identity can be a combination of physical and conceptual continuity. 2. The Prestige. In this movie, the concept of identity is explored through the idea of cloning. If a perfect copy of you is created, which one is the real? 3. Blade Runner. The movie raises questions about the identity of replicants. If they possess human memories and emotions, are they still artificial beings? Or do they share a human essence? The ship of Theseus paradox challenges us to think deeply about what it means for something or someone to remain the same over time. Whether applied to objects, people, or ideas, it forces us to confront the fluidity of identity and the nature of change. While there may never be a definitive answer, the paradox continues to inspire debate and exploration across philosophy, science, and culture. And there you have it, mind-bending paradoxes that challenge the way we think about reality, identity, logic, and the universe itself. These paradoxes aren't just puzzles. They're gateways to deeper questions about our world and our place in it. They force us to look beyond the obvious, question our assumptions, and embrace the complexity of life. So, which paradox blew your mind the most? Was it the infinite chase of Achilles, the dual identity of the ship of Theseus, or maybe one of the others? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoy exploring fascinating ideas like these, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more thought-provoking content. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.